June 4th, 1944. 22:30 hours. Mid-Atlantic, west of Cape Blanco, Africa. In darkness 300 miles off the African coast, beneath a moonless sky, U-505 broke the surface like a breaching whale. Not by choice. The German submarine erupted from 200 feet of black water in a fountain of white spray and oily diesel smoke, her steel hull screaming under pressure as compressed air blasted through ruptured tanks, seawater cascading in torrents off her conning tower. She was dying. 4 American depth charges, each packed with 600 pounds of Torpex explosive, had walked across her pressure hull 14 minutes earlier, rupturing plates, flooding compartments, cracking battery casings, filling her interior with chlorine gas so thick that men collapsed gasping at their stations. Her crew abandoned ship in panic. 49 German sailors leaped into the cold Atlantic wearing life jackets, swimming frantically away from what every man believed would become their steel coffin, dragging them down 3 miles to the ocean floor. Standard doctrine: open the vents, scuttle, die with honor. But Oberleutnant Harold Lang, commander of U-505, had no time to scuttle. The depth charges had damaged the scuttling mechanism. The demolition charges wouldn't fire. The vents were jammed. U-505 wallowed on the surface, mortally wounded but floating, her secrets exposed. And 800 yards away, aboard the American escort carrier USS Guadalcanal, Captain Daniel Vincent Gallery saw not a wreck, but a prize. The most valuable prize in naval warfare, a German U-boat, intact, with her Enigma machine still aboard. If you find stories of single decisions that rewrote intelligence history compelling, we invite you to subscribe to Orders of History and hit the notification bell. Because this moment, where one captain's obsession with an impossible idea became the greatest naval capture of World War II, changed everything about how the Battle of the Atlantic was fought. The capture of U-505 should never have happened. In 3 years of Atlantic combat, no American warship had ever captured a German submarine intact. It was impossible for half a dozen reasons. U-boats scuttled themselves when cornered. Standing orders from Admiral Donitz were explicit and ruthless. Destroy all code materials, smash the Enigma rotors, open the vents, flood the boat. Go down fighting or go down honorably. Never surrender. The British had managed it once. HMS Bulldog captured U-110 in May 1941. Seizing Enigma materials that gave the Allies months of access to German naval codes. But that was 3 years ago. Since then, German encryption had evolved. New rotors, new procedures, new machines. By mid-1944, Allied codebreakers at Bletchley Park could read some German naval traffic, mostly weather reports and routine signals. But critical operational codes remained impenetrable for days or weeks at a time. U-boat Wolfpack positions were often unknown until after they struck. Convoy routing relied on guesswork and luck. Merchant ships still died by the hundreds. The Atlantic remained a graveyard. Captain Daniel Gallery understood this better than most. He was 43 years old, a Chicago native, Naval Academy class of 1920, a maverick who believed the Navy's passive anti-submarine doctrine was fundamentally wrong. Hunting U-boats with destroyers and aircraft was effective. But capturing one intact? That would be a war winner. Gallery had been obsessed with the idea for a year. He had studied the British capture of U-110. He had analyzed boarding tactics. He had war-game scenarios with his staff until they thought he was insane. Then he did something unprecedented. He trained his men to board a hostile submarine. For 6 months, Task Group 22.3, Guadalcanal and her 5 destroyer escorts, practiced boarding drills at sea. They rigged grappling hooks and boarding ladders. They practiced suppressing fire against a surfaced submarine mock-up. They formed dedicated boarding parties equipped with axes, crowbars, flashlights, pistols, and detailed diagrams of German U-boat interiors. His destroyer captains thought Gallery had lost his mind. Board a U-boat? Under fire? While it's sinking? In the middle of the Atlantic with no support? The Navy doesn't do that. You sink U-boats. You don't capture them. Gallery didn't care. He believed. And he drilled his men relentlessly until boarding a submarine became muscle memory. By June 1944, Task Group 22.3 was the most unconventional hunter-killer group in the Atlantic Fleet. They weren't hunting to sink. They were hunting to capture. U-505 had left Lorient, France, on March 16, 1944, under the command of Oberleutnant Harold Lange, a cautious, experienced commander on his Second Atlantic Patrol. His orders were simple: disrupt Allied shipping lanes off West Africa, attack convoy stragglers, report enemy positions, survive. By early June, Lange had sunk nothing. The Americans had gotten too good. Their escort carriers, small, slow, converted merchant hulls carrying 24 aircraft, now prowled far from convoy lanes, hunting U-boats instead of defending convoys. The hunter-killer groups had turned the Atlantic into a death trap. Lange knew this. He maneuvered cautiously, diving at the first sign of aircraft, transmitting only in short, coded bursts. On June 4th, Lange detected convoy GUS-40, 64 merchant ships steaming north from Casablanca toward Gibraltar, escorted by destroyers and frigates. He maneuvered carefully, trying to gain firing position without being detected. He failed. At 17:30 hours, a Grumman Wildcat fighter from Guadalcanal spotted U-505's periscope wake. The pilot vectored in a Grumman Avenger torpedo bomber carrying sonobuoys and depth charges. The Avenger dropped a pattern of 4 Mark 47 depth charges set for shallow detonation. The first exploded 50 yards off U-505's starboard quarter, close enough to slam the submarine sideways, buckling hull plates, shattering gauges. The second exploded directly overhead, 600 pounds of Torpex detonating 20 feet above the pressure hull, rupturing seams, splitting welds. The third exploded amidships, flooding the aft torpedo room, cracking battery casings, releasing hydrochloric acid into bilge water that instantly generated choking clouds of chlorine gas. The fourth exploded astern, jamming the rudder, wrecking the stern planes, flooding the motor room. Inside U-505, hell. The lights failed. Emergency lighting flickered red. Water roared through cracks in the pressure hull. Chlorine gas filled the air so thick that men collapsed. Lange had perhaps 30 seconds to make a decision: stay down and die. Every man aboard would suffocate or drown within minutes, or surface and fight. Surrender was not an option in his mind. Surface, man the deck gun, fight until the Americans machine-gunned them or the boat sank. He blew all ballast tanks. U-505 rocketed toward the surface, driven by compressed air and desperation. At 22:20, she broke through, water exploding off her hull, diesel smoke belching from vents. Lange scrambled up through the conning tower hatch, expecting to see American destroyers closing for the kill. Instead, he saw chaos. The destroyer escort USS Chatelaine was circling at high speed. The destroyer escort USS Pillsbury was turning toward him. Aircraft circled overhead, and aboard Guadalcanal, 800 yards distant, Captain Gallery was already giving orders that would change naval history. Boarding party away. Take that submarine. Lieutenant Commander George Godfrey, commanding Pillsbury, didn't hesitate. He had trained for this moment for 6 months. He knew the drill. Close fast. Lower the whaleboat. Board before she sinks or scuttles. Pillsbury swung toward U-505 at 20 knots, her crew scrambling to action stations. On U-505's deck, Lange made his final command decision: abandon ship. He had no time to scuttle properly. The vents were jammed. The demolition charges wouldn't fire. The boat was sinking anyway. Get the men off before she went down. German sailors poured through the conning tower hatch, leaping into the Atlantic, swimming for their lives. Within 3 minutes, all 49 crew members were in the water. Lange was the last off, diving into the sea at 22:28. Pillsbury closed to 30 yards. A motor whaleboat lowered over the side, manned by 9 volunteers led by Lieutenant Junior Grade Albert Leroy David, a 24-year-old from Maryville, Missouri, Naval Academy class of 1942, who had never boarded a hostile ship in his life. David didn't hesitate either. He had trained for this. He knew German U-boats were wired with scuttling charges. He knew there might be demolition timers ticking. He knew armed sailors might still be aboard. He climbed onto U-505's slippery, tilted deck anyway, pistol drawn, flashlight in hand. The conning tower hatch gaped open like a black mouth. David peered down into darkness. Silence. Only the hiss of leaking air and the slosh of seawater. He descended the ladder. Inside, the air was unbreathable. diesel fumes, chlorine gas, seawater, oil, the stench of fear. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red. The deck tilted 15 degrees to port. Water sloshed ankle-deep through the control room. David moved forward, checking compartments, pistol raised. Empty. The Germans had abandoned completely, but the boat was sinking. Water poured through cracks in the pressure hull. The stern was settling. Minutes remained before U-505 slipped under. David's 8-man boarding party clambered aboard and spread through the submarine with desperate urgency. Zenon Lukosius, radio man second class, headed for the radio room to secure communications equipment. Arthur Knispel, torpedo man's mate first class, headed forward to check torpedo tubes and prevent flooding. Stanley Wadowiak, motor machinist's mate second class, headed aft to assess engine room damage. They worked frantically, closing watertight doors, plugging leaks with mattresses, blankets, wooden wedges, anything that would fit, throwing overboard heavy equipment, spare torpedoes, ammunition, toolboxes, anything to lighten the boat, and gathering intelligence, code books in the captain's cabin, navigation charts spread on the chart table, operational orders stuffed in a safe, technical manuals lining shelves, and in the radio room, still powered, still operational, still warm from recent use, the Enigma machine, type M4, 4 rotors instead of 3, naval variant with special reflector, current settings for June 4th, current code books, everything. Lukosius disconnected it carefully, wrapped it in canvas torn from a bunk, passed it up through the conning tower hatch to waiting hands in Pillsbury's whaleboat. Then tragedy struck. A hatch fell. Zenon Lukosius, climbing back down with additional equipment, was struck in the head by a steel hatch that slipped from its mounting. He collapsed unconscious in the control room. His shipmates carried him topside, but he died within minutes, the only American casualty of the entire boarding action. By 2300 hours, 30 minutes after U-505 surfaced, Pillsbury had rigged towing cables to the submarine's bow. By midnight, U-505 was under tow, stern first, wallowing through Atlantic swells at 4 knots. Gallery ordered absolute radio silence. No transmissions, no signals, no acknowledgement of what had just happened. If the Germans learned a U-boat had been captured intact, they would change every code immediately. The intelligence haul would evaporate. So Task Group 22.3 steamed southeast toward Bermuda in total communications blackout, towing the most valuable intelligence prize of the Atlantic War behind them, like a secret dragged through darkness. For 5 days, U-505 struggled through heavy seas. Repair parties worked around the clock, pumping, patching, praying. The stern settled deeper each day. Twice, the tow cable parted and had to be re-rigged in rolling seas. 3 times, flooding nearly overwhelmed the pumps. But Guadalcanal's crew refused to let her go. On June 19th, 15 days after the capture, U-505 reached Bermuda, hidden in a secure anchorage behind anti-submarine nets and Marine guards with orders to shoot anyone who approached without authorization. Intelligence teams from Washington arrived within hours. What they found exceeded every expectation. The Enigma machine was intact and operational. The codebooks were current through mid-June. The navigation charts showed U-boat patrol routes, rendezvous coordinates, supply points, wolfpack formations. The technical manuals detailed every system aboard Type 1C submarines, the most common operational U-boat in the Atlantic. The operational orders revealed Donitz's tactical doctrine, communication procedures, evasion techniques. The captain's safe contained recognition signals, grid coordinates, minefield maps. It was the greatest intelligence coup of the naval war. Allied codebreakers could now read German naval traffic in near real time. U-boat positions became known hours after transmission. Convoy routes could be adjusted to avoid wolfpacks. Supply submarines could be intercepted and destroyed. Ambushes could be planned. The entire German naval command structure became transparent. But Gallery's secrecy orders held firm. U-505 was commissioned into the United States Navy on September 15, 1944, the only enemy submarine ever to serve under American colors. She was designated USS Nemo for security purposes. She underwent exhaustive testing. Every system analyzed, every weakness documented, every operational characteristic measured and cataloged. American submarine designers used her to improve their own boats. Anti-submarine warfare officers used her to develop new tactics. And the captured intelligence flowed to fleet commanders across the Atlantic. The Germans never knew. Admiral Donitz believed U-505 had been lost with all hands. Depth charge to destruction, another casualty in the grinding attrition of the Atlantic campaign. German naval codes never changed. For the remaining 11 months of the war, Allied intelligence read German U-boat communications as if they were written in English. The results were devastating. U-boat losses skyrocketed. In June 1944, the month of U-505's capture, 25 U-boats were sunk. In July, 23 more. By December, German submarine operations in the North Atlantic had effectively ceased. Convoys crossed almost unmolested. The Battle of the Atlantic, the longest, most crucial campaign of World War II, was won. And the turning point was 8 minutes on June 4th when Lieutenant Albert David climbed into a sinking enemy submarine and refused to let it go. The human cost of the capture was minimal, but profound. Zenon Lukosius died securing intelligence that saved thousands of Allied sailors. On the German side, Lang and his 48 surviving crew members spent the rest of the war in prisoner-of-war camps in Louisiana and Colorado, never knowing their submarine had betrayed every secret of the Kriegsmarine. They believed they had simply been unlucky, caught on the surface, forced to abandon, their boats sunk by American destroyers after they surrendered. The truth remained classified until 1954, 9 years after the war ended. When the story finally emerged, it stunned the naval world. An American captain had trained his men for an impossible mission. They had executed it perfectly under fire, and they had captured the only enemy submarine ever taken by the United States Navy in combat. Gallery received the Distinguished Service Medal. David received the Medal of Honor posthumously. He had died in a car accident in 1945, never knowing the full significance of what he accomplished. The other boarding party members received Navy Crosses and Silver Stars. U-505 herself survived. After the war, she was preserved and eventually donated to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, where she remains today, the only German U-boat on permanent display in the United States. Visitors walk through her cramped interior, touch her periscope handles, stand in the control room where Lange gave his final orders, see the Enigma machine that betrayed an empire. Few realize they're standing inside one of the most significant intelligence operations of World War II. The strategic impact of U-505's capture cannot be overstated. Every convoy that crossed safely after June 1944 benefited from intelligence derived from her capture. Every U-boat sunk in the final year of the war was hunted using knowledge extracted from her codebooks. The Normandy invasion relied on secure Atlantic supply lines made possible by broken German naval codes. The final defeat of Germany depended on uninterrupted flow of American men and material across an ocean made safe by Gallery's impossible gamble. And it all came down to one decision at 22:30 on June 4, 1944. Board, don't sink. Capture, don't destroy. Risk everything for intelligence instead of settling for one more kill. If this kind of story, where preparation meets opportunity and one unconventional decision cascades into strategic victory, resonates with you, we ask you to join the Orders of History mission. Subscribe to this channel. Share this episode with anyone who values the hidden turning points that actually won the war. And tell us in the comments, did you know that U-505 is still intact and on display in Chicago, the only German submarine captured by the United States Navy in World War II, and that visitors can walk through her today? What other seemingly impossible mission succeeded because someone refused to accept conventional wisdom? What other commanders saw opportunities where doctrine saw only danger? Because every time we uncover these moments together, we honor not just the courage, but the vision, the ability to see beyond what is to what might be. Gallery saw a prize where others saw a target. David saw a mission where others saw suicide. And one surface attack, one boarding action lasting 8 desperate minutes, changed everything about how the Atlantic War was fought and won.